Hello, student. My name is Ever Lopez, and I'll be your history professor for this semester. So, before we get started with our assignments and all this that we're going to be doing in this course, I want to start by explaining what is it that we're going to be doing in this course, right? Uh, the way I see it, you could be anywhere right now. You could be, sleeping, playing video games with your family, whatever it is. But you're here with me taking a history course, right? So I think it's only fair for me to explain to you, you know, what is it that we're gonna be doing here, guys, right? And for me to explain this to you, I need to start off by explaining, why is history important, right? And I always like to start my courses with that question because I want students to get a grasp of, you know, the value of taking a history course, uh, the value of, taking time of your day to go learn about historical events so you can take something of value with you. So to start off class, uh, why is history important, right? So students usually give me a similar answer in the idea of, it's important to learn about history because we learn from our mistakes, or uh, the whole, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And it's a cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, guys. It's because it's true, right? There is something very valuable to learn from history, right? So let's start, right? The way I like to explain this is that there are three main reasons why history is very important, right? So first of all, before I go over the three reasons, uh, history is most definitely not just facts and dates, right? I always had this issue when I was in middle school and high school, and I had my teachers approach history in a very facts and dates kind of manner, right? So the way I see it, class, memorizing information for no reason and no practical use for it, it serves no purpose, right? So, uh, the way we're going to approach history, guys, is to first of all understand why it's important, right? So, number one, finding truth, right? Uh, People have this idea, or let me backtrack. When people first started writing history, is because they thought that this was a good way to find truth, right? However, very soon people realized that history depends on perspectives, right? You know, deciding whether something is good or bad will depend on really who you ask, right? So you will not find, or you'll rarely find absolute truth in history, but what you will find are perspectives, right? So what do I mean by this, guys? Right? So let me give you an example. George Washington, right? To us Americans, Washington is, the father of our nation, our greatest American hero. But for the British, will Washington be considered such a hero? For the British, he's most certainly not, right? For the British, Washington is a traitor. Okay, so the question is, who's correct, right? And the answer is we're both correct, right? Because it's a matter of perspective, right? Here in America, he's our hero. In Britain, he's not. But the reality is that we're both correct because all we're doing is applying our perspective to judge events, right? And to add another layer of this, guys, is the idea that perspectives change with time. An example of this is Christopher Columbus, right? Even when I was a little kid, Columbus was one of one of our greatest heroes, right? But now he is villainized, right? He's seen as a bad guy, right? So what changed? Because most certainly history did not change. So what changed was the perspective, right? We judge Columbus with certain eyes 30 years ago and before that, and now we're judging him with different eyes, right? So the perspectives are changing. So it's just adding another layer of interpretation to all of these events. All right. So all those different things, guys, uh, to me, just make history very interesting, right? Because as history is part of the social sciences, uh, but as opposed to other sciences, there are no formulas in history, right? So there, there's no way to find absolute truth, right? There's no way to do this whole, you know, 10 points for being the first president and 20 points for being the general and such, and so forth, and you add all the points and then that's how you judge it, right? So we just need to give it our interpretation, and judge it from there, right? So, but in itself, history, it's a great tool to understanding truth, right? Through different perspectives, putting it together kind of like puzzles and finding our truth, right? So number two, right? Learning from history, guys, can help us understand who we are. All right. So when I was in middle school, or when I was teaching middle school, rather, students always kind of complain when I was introducing lessons, and because they kind of saw it kind of like meaningless about learning something that happened 200 years ago or 500 years ago, or however long ago. And they always ask this question of like, why are we learning this? This happened a long time ago, these people are dead, blah blah blah. And quite honestly, it's a great question. It is a great question, right? So uh, why are we learning all this, guys, right? Because learning about history, guys, can help you understand who you are, right? Where do you come from? All right. So, great example. Let's just look around us. Our names, the name of our city, even the way we look, our culture, our food, our music, everything. It has to do with history. It has to do with where we come from. And through history is the only way that we can understand these things, right? If we celebrate quinceañeras as opposed to sweet 16s, if we speak Spanish as opposed to English, if we eat certain foods and not others, right? It has to do with history, guys. It has to do with our culture. And understanding history is really the only way. It's not the only way, but it's a great way to understand this thing. All right. So another great example of this, guys, is that we speak English in the US, but Spanish in Mexico. We're very close to each other, right? Like at some points, we even overlap, right? But we're very different. And why are we so different yet so close to each other, right? And the answer is in history, right? A long time ago, the Spanish settled in what is present day Mexico and all of South America, with the exception of Brazil. And then, in North America, it was the British. And both of these empires brought with them, culture, language, tradition, and all different things. And over time, they evolved, and they made us what we are today, guys, right? But history is one of these main ways that we can understand this, all right? Uh, and number three, guys, all right? History helps you understand current events and the world around you. All right. The way I like to see this, guys, is that learning about history is important to understand how past events play a role in important current events and their impact in the present. All right. So what I mean by this, guys, is, let me give you an example. If you look at the news recently, you're gonna find, for example, presidential elections upcoming, or Confederate statues being removed, or the names of schools being changed, and things like that, guys, right? Understanding your past can help you act with knowledge in the present. Right? So knowing the history behind these things is the only way that we can understand current events and really have informed opinions on this. All right. So to summarize, guys, right? Finding truth, learning who you are, act with knowledge in current events, right? So let me give you an example, just to close off on this. Um, when we teach, or when I talk about uh, the Declaration of Independence, for example, the way I'm going to approach this course class, it will not be a facts and date kind of thing, right? I'll rarely ask you to know facts and dates, say for, July 4th, 1776, uh, maybe October 12th, 1492. Uh, but for example, when we cover something like the Declaration of Independence, we don't need to know that Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Don't get me wrong, we do need to know it, right? But that is the very basic. That is your baseline. We should know July 4th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson, Philadelphia, right? But what we really need to know, what really matters, is the impact the Declaration of Independence has had in the history of the US, and not just the US, but around the world, right? In systems of government, in setting up the concept of equality, in the idea of natural rights. And I could go on and forever, 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 and on the Declaration of Independence. But rather than learning the very basics of, you know, the 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 good and bad, or facts and dates, we're going to approach history in a manner of, causes, uh, outcomes, lessons to learn from it. How can we use this information to act with knowledge in the present? How does this help us understand who we are, where we come from? In that matter, guys. All right. So again, history will help us understand where we come from, who we are in general, and this is the way that I'll be approaching this course. So I really do hope that you all take something of value from it, and I'll see you all soon, guys. Be safe.